An account of the amours and marriages of the savages. I could recount 1,000 curious things relating to the courtship and the way of marrying among the savages, but the relation of so many particulars would be too tedious, for which reason I shall only confine myself to what is most essential to that subject. It may be justly said that the men are as cold and indifferent as the girls are passionate and warm. The former love nothing but war and hunting, and their utmost ambition reaches no farther. When they are at home and have nothing to do, they run with the match, that is, they are night walkers. The young men do not marry till they are 30 years of age, for they pretend that the enjoyment of women does so enervate them that they have not the same measure of strength to undergo great fatigues, and that their hams are too weak for long marches or quick pursuits. In pursuance of this thought, 'tis alleged that those who have married or strolled in the nights too often are taken by the Iroquois, by reason of the weakness of their limbs and the decay of their vigor. But after all, we must not imagine that they live chaste till that age, for they pretend that excessive continence occasions vapors, disorders of the kidneys, and a suppression of urine, so that 'tis necessary for their health to have a run once a week. If the savages were capable of being subjected to the empire of love, they must needs have an extraordinary command of themselves to disguise the just jealousy they might have of their mistresses, and at the same time to carry it fair with their rivals. I know the humor of the savages better than a great many French people that have lived among them all their lifetime, for I study their customs so narrowly and exactly that all their conduct of life is as perfectly well known to me as if I had been among them all my lifetime, and 'tis this exact knowledge that prompts me to say that they are altogether strangers to that blind fury which we call love. They content themselves with a tender friendship that is not liable to all the extravagancies that the passion of love raises in such breasts as harbor it. In a word, they live with such tranquillity that one may call their love simple goodwill, and their discretion upon that head is unimaginable. Their friendship is firm, but free of transport, for they are very careful in preserving the liberty and freedom of their heart, which they look upon as the most valuable treasure upon earth. From whence I conclude that they are not altogether so savage as we are. The savages never quarrel among themselves, neither do they reproach or affront one another. One man among them is as good as another, for all are upon the same level. They have no disorders occasioned by a girl or a wife, for the women are wise, and so are their husbands. The girls indeed are a little foolish, and the young men play the fool with them not unfrequently. But then you must consider that a young woman is allowed to do what she pleases, let her conduct be what it will. Neither father nor mother, brother nor sister can pretend to control her. A young woman, say they, is master of her own body, and by her natural right of liberty is free to do what she pleases. But on the other hand, the married women, being allowed the privilege of quitting their husbands when they please, had as good be dead as be guilty of adultery. In like manner, the husbands being entitled to the same privilege would look upon themselves as infamous if they were faithless to their wives. Nothing of intrigue or courtship must be mentioned to the savage ladies in the daytime, for they will not hear it. They'll tell you the nighttime is the most proper season for that, insomuch that if a youth should by chance accost a girl in the daytime after this manner, "I love thee more than the light of the sun," such is their phrase, "listen to what I say," etc., she would give him some affront and withdraw. This is a general rule, that whoever designs to win the affection of a girl must speak to her in the daytime of things that lie remote from the intrigues of love. One may converse with them privately as long as he will, and talk of 1,000 adventures that happen every minute, upon which they make their replies very pleasantly, for one cannot imagine what a gay and jovial temper they are of. They are very apt to laugh, and that with a very engaging air. 'Tis at these private interviews that the savages smell out their young women's thoughts, for though the subject of their discourse is of an indifferent strain, yet they talk over nicer subjects in the language of their eyes. After a young man has paid 2 or 3 visits to his mistress, and fancies that she has looked upon him with a favorable eye, he takes the following course to know the truth of the matter. You must take notice that, forasmuch as the savages are strangers to meum and tuum, to superiority and subordination, and live in a state of equality pursuant to the principles of nature, they are under no apprehension of robbers or secret enemies, so that their huts are open night and day. You must know farther, that 2 hours after sunset, the old superannuated persons, or the slaves, who never lie in their masters' huts, take care to cover up the fire before they go. 'Tis then that the young savage comes well wrapped up to his mistress' hut, and lights a sort of a match at the fire, after which he opens the door of his mistress' apartment, and makes up to her bed. If she blows out the light, he lies down by her, but if she pulls her covering over her face, he retires, that being a sign that she will not receive him. The young women drink the juice of certain roots, which prevents their conception, or kills the fruit of the womb, for if a girl proves with child, she'll never get a husband. They'll suffer anybody to sit upon the foot of their bed, only to have a little chat, and if another comes an hour after, that they like, they do not stand to grant him their last favors. As to this custom, which indeed is singular, the most sensible savages gave this reason for it, that they will not depend upon their lovers, but remove all ground of suspicion, both from the one and the other, that so they may act as they please. The savage women like the French better than their own countrymen, by reason that the former are more prodigal of their vigor, and mind a woman's business more closely. In the meantime, the Jesuits use all efforts to prevent their keeping company with the French. They have superannuated fellows placed in all the huts who, like faithful spies, give an account of all that they see or hear. The French who have the misfortune to be discovered are publicly named in the pulpit, complained of to the bishop and the governor-general, excommunicated, and treated as transgressors of the law. But after all the artifices and opposition of the good fathers, a great many intrigues are carried on in the villages that they know nothing of. The Jesuits never offered to check the young savages for keeping company with girls, for if they offered to censure their conduct and use them with the same liberty as they do the French, they would tell them roundly that they're sorry the fathers have a mind to their mistresses. This was the answer that a young Huron spoke aloud one day in the church, when a Jesuit, addressing himself to him, was preaching down the night rambles of the savages with an apostolical freedom. This people cannot conceive that the Europeans, who value themselves upon their sense and knowledge, should be so blind and so ignorant as not to know that marriage in their way is a source of trouble and uneasiness. To be engaged for one's lifetime, to them is a matter of wonder and surprise. They look upon it as a monstrous thing to be tied one to another without any hopes of being able to untie or break the knot. In fine, in spite of all the reasons and arguments that subject affords, they lay down this for a firm and unmovable truth, that we Europeans are born in slavery and deserve no other condition than that of servitude. In our country, their state of marriage would be justly looked upon as a criminal way of conversation. A savage, for instance, that had signalized himself several times in the field and acquired the reputation of a brave warrior, hath a mind to marry by the means of a contract, or rather a lease of 30 years, with the hopes of seeing in his old age a family descended of himself that shall provide for him. This hero looks out for an agreeable girl, and after he and she had settled the matter, they reveal their design to their relations, who at the same time cannot oppose it, but are obliged to consent and to assist at the ceremony. They meet together in the hut of the ancientest relation or parent, where a feast is prepared on a day fixed for that purpose. Upon such occasions the company is very numerous, and the table is covered with all manner of dainties in a very prodigial manner, and those who assist at the festival dance and sing and perform the other diversions of the country. After the feasting and merrymaking is over, all the relations of the bridegroom retire, excepting 4 of the oldest, after which the bride, accompanied with 4 of her ancientest female relations, appears at one of the doors of the hut, and is received by the most decrepit man of the bridegroom's company, who conducts her to the bridegroom at a certain place, where the 2 parties stand upright upon a fine mat, holding a rod between them, while the old men pronounce some short harangues. In this posture do the 2 married persons harangue one after another, and dance together, singing all the while, and holding the rod in their hands, which they afterwards break into as many pieces as there are witnesses to the ceremony, in order to be distributed among them. This done, the bride is reconducted out of the hut, where the young women stay for her to accompany her to her father's apartment, and the bridegroom or married man is obliged to go there to find her when he has a mind to her company, till such time as she brings forth a child. Then, indeed, she conveys her clothes to her husband's apartment, and continues with him till the marriage is dissolved. 'Tis allowable both for the man and the woman to part when they please. Commonly they give one another 8 days' warning. Sometimes they offer reasons to justify their conduct, but for the most part the usual plea is that they are sick and out of order, and that repose is more proper for them than the fatigue of a married life. Then the little pieces of the rod that were distributed among the relations of the married persons are brought into that hut in which the marriage was solemnized and burnt in their presence. You must observe that this separation is accomplished without any dispute or quarrel. Both the men and the women thus unmarried may be married again to whom they please, but commonly they lie by 3 or 6 months before they consummate their second marriage. When this separation happens, the children are divided equally between them, for the children are the treasure of the savages. If their number be odd, the woman hath the better half. Though they are at their liberty to change, yet there are several savages that live all their lifetime with one woman. I gave you to know above that during the whole course of their married state, they maintain an inviolable fidelity to one another. But, which is yet more edifying, as soon as the woman is declared to be with child, both she and her bedfellow abstain from enjoyment, and observe an exact course of continence from thence to the 30th day after her childbirth. When a woman is ready to lie in, she withdraws to a certain hut allotted for that use, being attended by her she-slaves, who serve and assist her as far as they can. In fine, the female sex in this country deliver themselves without the assistance of midwives, for they bring forth their children with a facility that the European women can scarce have any notion of, and they never lie in above 2 or 3 days. They observe a sort of purification for 30 days if the child be a boy, and for 40 if it be a girl. Until that time is expired, they do not return to their husband's apartment. As soon as their children come into the world, they dip them in warm water up to the chin, after which they swathe them down upon little boards or planks stuffed with cotton, where they lie upon their backs, as I insinuated under the head of the habit, houses, etc. of the savages. They never make use of nurses, unless it be when the mothers are out of order, and they never wean their children, but suckle them so long as they have milk, with which indeed they are very plentifully provided. The women have no opportunity of marriage after the 50th year of their age, for the men of the like age allege that since they cannot then bear children, 'twould be a piece of folly to meddle with them, and the young sparks affirm that their withered beauty has not force enough to charm them, at a time when there is no scarcity of buxom young girls. In this distress, when the young men will not use them as mistresses, and men of riper years refuse them for wives, if their complexion be anything amorous, they are forced to adopt some prisoner of war that is presented them in order to answer their pressing necessities. When the husband or wife comes to die, the widowhood does not last above 6 months, and if in that space of time the widow or widower dreams of their deceased bedfellow, they poison themselves in cold blood with all the contentment imaginable, and at the same time sing a sort of tune that one may safely say proceeds from the heart. But if the surviving party dreams but once of the deceased, they say that the spirit of dreams was not sure that the deceased person was uneasy in the country of souls, forasmuch as he only passed by without returning, and for that reason they think they are not obliged to go keep him company. These savages are incapable of jealousy. That is a passion they know nothing of. They jeer the Europeans upon that head, and brand a man's distrust of his wife for a piece of manifest folly, as if, say they, we were not certain that 'tis impossible for so weak an animal to be true to its promises. To pursue their fallacious way of arguing, they allege that suspicion is only a doubt, and that to doubt of what one sees is an argument of blindness and folly, and in fine, that 'tis impossible, but that the constraint and perpetuity that attends our marriages, or the bait of gold and silver, should oblige a woman when cloyed with one and the same husband to whet her appetite in the embraces of another man. I am fully convinced that a savage would choose rather to suffer mutilation than to embrace his neighbor's wife. Nor is the chastity of the she-savages less nice, for I do not believe that in the space of 50 years there has been one instance among them of the invasion of another man's bed. 'Tis true, the French, being incapable to distinguish between the married and unmarried women, sometimes make their address to the former when they find them alone in the woods or when they walk out into the fields. But upon such occasions they always receive this answer: "The fiend which is before mine eyes hinders me to see thee." The savages go always by the mother's name. To make this plain by an example, the leader of the nation of Hurons, who is called Sastaretsi, being married to a daughter of another Huron family, by whom he has several children, that general's name is extinct at his death, for that his children assume the name of the mother. Now, it may be asked how the name of Sastaretsi has been kept up for the space of 700 or 800 years among that people, and is likely to continue to future ages. But the question is easily answered if we consider that the sister of this Sastaretsi being married to another savage, whom we shall call Adario, the children springing from that marriage will be called Sastaretsi after the mother, and not Adario after his father. When I asked them the reason of the custom, they replied that the children having received their soul from their father, and their body from their mother, 'twas but reasonable that the maternal name should be perpetuated. I represented to them, I do not know how often, that God alone was the only creator of souls, and that it was more reasonable to derive the original of that custom from the certainty that they had of the mother beyond that of the father, but they positively affirmed that this reason was absurd, without offering any proof. When a woman has lost a husband that leaves brothers who are bachelors, one of these marries the widow 6 months after his death. The same is the case with the sisters of a wife, for when a married woman dies, commonly one of the sisters supplies her place. But you must take notice that this custom is only observed by the savages that pretend to be wiser than their neighbors. Some savages continue bachelors to their dying day and never appear either at hunting or in warlike expeditions, as being either lunatic or sickly. But at the same time, they are as much esteemed as the bravest and halest men in the country, or at least, if they rally upon them, 'tis never done where they are present. Among the Illines there are several hermaphrodites who go in a woman's habit, but frequent the company of both sexes. These Illines are strangely given to sodomy, as well as the other savages that live near the river Mississippi. This, sir, is all that I could learn of the way of marriage and the amours of the Americans, who are so far from giving a full loose to their venereal appetite, that they always act with a command over themselves, being very moderate in their adventures with women, whom they make use of only for the propagation of their families and the preservation of their health, their conduct upon this head may serve for a just reprimand to the Europeans. I observed before that if once a girl proves with child, she never gets a husband, but I ought to have added that some young women will not hear of a husband, through a principle of debauchery. That sort of women are called ikoue ne kiousa, i.e. hunting women, for they commonly accompany the huntsmen in their diversions. To justify their conduct, they allege that they find themselves to be of too indifferent a temper to brook the conjugal yoke, to be too careless for the bringing up of children, and too impatient to bear the passing of the whole winter in the villages. Thus it is that they cover and disguise their lewdness. Their parents or relations dare not censure their vicious conduct. On the contrary, they seem to approve of it, in declaring, as I said before, that their daughters have the command of their own bodies and may dispose of their persons as they think fit, they being at their liberty to do what they please. In short, the children of these common women are accounted a lawful issue, and entitled to all the privileges of other children, abating for one thing, namely, that the noted warriors or counselors will not accept of them for their sons-in-law, and that they cannot enter into alliance with certain ancient families, though at the same time these families are not possessed of any peculiar right or preeminence. The Jesuits do their utmost to prevent the lewd practices of these whores, by preaching to their parents that their indulgence is very disagreeable to the Great Spirit, that they must answer before God for not confining their children to the measures of continency and chastity, and that a fire is kindled in the other world to torment them forever, unless they take more care to correct vice. To such remonstrances the men reply, "That's admirable," and the women usually tell the good fathers, in a deriding way, that if their threats be well grounded, the mountains of the other world must consist of the ashes of souls.